It's a time of transition. It's a time of change, y'all. And there are changes coming this way as well to the podcast, Abolitionist Dreamscape. So if you have been with me for a while, you know there's been a bit of a lull in this season of me getting podcast episodes out. That is honestly not like me, especially compared to my last two seasons. But that's because I've been in my own kind of transition. Um, what do you say, kind of hibernation incubation phase. And that is what I'm going to talk about for this intro that really does align with the conversation that I had with Laura Chung, an astrologer herself, as we were talking about astrological middle age and how it's impacting us both of us being 43 and kind of different aspects of our astrological middle age. What has come from this conversation since we filmed back in, I want to say, December of last year, is a revelation for me of the transition period that I'm in right now. And so I will talk about that a little bit before we get into the interview. So welcome. This is Abolitionist Dreamscapes. What does it mean to break the things that don't work for you anymore, while also dreaming of the things that actually can? Well, that's what I'm figuring out now. So come along with me as I journey through this thing called life. My name is Dr. Nicole Truesdell, a 40-something-year-old ex-academic deconstructing from all the things that I was told I was supposed to be in order to figure out what it is and who it is I truly am. This is my Abolitionist Dreamscapes, so come along with me and strategically dream of the things that can actually make us human once again. Hey, y'all, welcome back. Now, I'm here, you're here, we're here together. Well, I'm finally here. You might have been already here thinking where the fuck I've been. Which I understand. Listen, I have been trying to figure out some things again, right? And it's been this kind of, I swear, long 3 to 4 year process of not just breaking things. And if you've seen or listened to episodes 1 and 2 of my podcast, or if you're on my Patreon, you kind of know a little bit about that journey. But it's not just about breaking things. It's been about really rediscovering, reclaiming parts of me that I had forgotten about, that I had pushed down, that I had kind of ignored in order to be quote unquote successful in higher ed streets, until that shit was just too confining for me. And I had to start to believe my body because it was breaking down. Right. But the past few years, really, y'all, has been a lot of experimenting and playing in ways that I didn't even realize I was experimenting and playing until the next kind of iteration or phase kind of knocked at the door. And so if you followed me, especially on the Patreon, right, when I first started to figure out how I wanted to not just show up in the public, but also figure out what it meant for me to be a creative, be an artist, I started through Patreon, along with social media platforms like TikTok. And that first iteration was called Knowledge Without Borders. And that was because I was trying to figure out how to break the four walls of the classroom as a way to teach the way I wanted to and also create. And then from there is where Abolitionist Dreamscapes came out of. And it was funny enough, it came after a download, a massive download after I had broken up with my first partner post my divorce. She had been here in the city for a few months. And honestly, I'm still not even sure if I want to call that a partnership. It was always nebulous, this nebulous kind of thing. And then when we finally made a decision to say that we were together is when I realized that I didn't want to do this. It was not something that was really aligning with how I wanted to do relationships. So after that breakup, literally, and then my divorce is finalized and stuff, is when Abolitionist Dreamscapes came to me. And I've been playing in there for a couple of years now, and it's been great, honestly. Like, it's given me a lot of space to experiment, like this podcast. I always wanted to do a podcast and finally just said, fuck it, and did it, right? But the last couple of months have been hard for me to go back to this kind of work. And when I say this kind of work, I mean the kind of topics and themes I was engaging with. It feels like I've been pushing my head up against the wall a little bit the past few years, trying to kind of figure out ways to teach about what we're in right now, which is authoritarianism, right? Like, and it's not just me, of others have throughout space and time been trying to do this. And that's when I realized it was because I was trying to do new things old ways. And literally episode, was it like 20 of the end of season 2, I talked about you can't do new shit old ways. but I was still doing, trying to do new shit old ways. And so that's when it hit me that Abolitionist Dreamscapes has now come to its end. It's got me to where I want to be, but now it's time to really strategically dream, to embody the lessons that not only I have taught, but also I've experienced. How do I transmute and translate them so that we can understand and see that world building and society making is going to require us being in our creative selves, in our bodies, and grounding in the materiality of our existence, and just experimenting and playing? Because let's be real, the state's playing in our face right now, so you might as well play back. And I really do mean that shit, y'all. We are getting played in our face. They are raiding our goddamn treasury coffers right now. They are breaking down already. And let's be real, some of these structures were already broken, but they are just completely dismantling them without any plan. There's no plan of action except to extract and consume. And that's really the spirit of the Christian white patriarch. And again, I talk about this a lot on my Patreon, and my Patreon is still there. So it is moving into embodied strategic dreaming along with my new podcast. So this will be the last season of Abolitionist Dreamscapes. I am closing out. With some interviews that I have with folks that I already have recorded and have lined up. And then I'm transitioning into the new podcast, most likely by late spring, which will be called Embodied Strategic Dreaming. And so follow me there, y'all. If you've rocked with me here and you liked my podcast, go ahead and rock with me over there, because in that space, I really am focusing more on talking with folks who embody dreaming as a praxis. And that's going to be DJs. It's going to be folks who are artists. It's going to be storytellers, and in all kinds of ways. And so I'm really excited for this next iteration that is really taking seriously our play and having us understand that if we are being led by fools, then we need to be wise fools, as my friend Forrest Brooks would always say, right? How do we bring out the wise fool in all of us? Because we do need to create, but it needs to be creation through different modalities. And for me, it's the music and it's the art, right? It's the storytelling. And it's really aligns with where I'm going creatively. And it's not just the Patreon and podcast that are going through a name change. I'm also going through a personal name change myself. Y'all know me as Dr. Nicole Truesdell. Truesdell is my daddy's name. That is my name, but it's also not my only name. I was actually born a Rouse. I'm the only child of my parents that was named Rouse at birth. The rest of them were named Truesdells. It's because, my daddy and my mama weren't married when I was born, but they got married about a month after. And Riles is a name that has stuck with me throughout my life, and it's popped up in different articulations and in different ways. And I go more into that story on my Patreon. So head over to Embodied Strategic Dreaming to learn more about that and other things. I got some fun things going on there starting this month. But when I was sitting in this transition period and really thinking about, not just changing the name, but really focusing on the creative side of me, that's when the ancestors were even louder than before, because they've always been at my table. They've always led my table ancestrally. And again, I talk about this a lot in season 1. But then I really understood why. It's because the Riles are not only just entrepreneurs and barbers and farmers, they're also musicians and preachers. Like, I come from a line of folks who go from the juke joint to the pulpit and back and forth. And so as I'm stepping into my own creativity, my own music itself, I'm part of a new group with my collaborator Forrest Brooks called Shy Marinage, and we're creating new music. I'll talk about that the next episode of this podcast. There was a way that I realized that I needed to kind of reclaim my name, my birth name, the name given to me by the people who claimed me. And that's the Rouse. So you're also going to see me change, using my name, Nicole Rouse, kind of PhD, Dr. Nicole Rouse, all those articulations going forward in the next podcast on my Patreon and also in my creative works. I'm in the process of writing my book now, and that is the name that I'm using for that book is also Nicole Rouse. So I'm leaning into that Rouse, that roar, that more wild side of me, because that is also what I'm finding is truly a big part of who I am. And this is something that again aligns a lot with what Laura and I are talking about in this episode, about what we have learned through this astrological middle age we're both going through. And if you were listening to episode both 9 and 18, where Laura and I were in conversation, we've been talking about this. So this time around, we wanted to just focus on what our astrological middle age transit stories are, as a way to hopefully help others who are either going through it, about to go through it, or have been through these kind of gnarly transits, that really do require us to question everything we thought was true. Shit gets real murky and real confusing. Things do break, but it also gives us the permission to create. And we have the ability to create our own lives, our own reality. Even as structures and systems are trying to have us conform, y'all, the power of the human via the body is that, baby, once you actually embody your humanity by embodying your body, there's a whole lot more than you are capable of, that we are capable of. And that is why the body was taken off the bat as the main commodity in these plantation economies. Okay. So again, I talk about that a lot more on my Patreon and all kinds of fun ways. This month, we are going to be exploring kind of embodied strategic dreaming by working with divination, along with watching Lovecraft Country, that we're going to kind of break apart over the next few months, watch it together as a group, and then kind of reflect out. And I've got some reflective questions and contemplations and playlists for folks to also engage with as part of that embodied learning, embodied dreaming, embodied strategy. So join me in the Patreon for that and much more. All right. And so now I'm going to turn it over to the interview. And again, this is me and Laura Chung, who is the host of the Awaken and Align podcast. She is also an astrologer and a master Reiki, Reiki master, excuse me, and also just a really, really lovely human being. Laura is somebody who I enjoy just talking with and talking to. It's that Sag rising in her. I don't know what it is, but it's also just her soul. So please enjoy this episode. Let me know what you think in whatever format that you are listening this to. And for more with me, again, go over to the Patreon, Embody Strategic Dreaming, because if we don't keep dreaming, y'all, somebody is going to dream for us. And right now we can see that the stakes dream is really nothing more than a nightmare. All right, let's do the episode. So how have you been?
Well, I've been traveling for like 6 weeks. I mean, there was like a little break in between where I came back home, but I've been really like on the road, which, as you know, I have a lot of Sagittarius placements. It's just a part of my life. And so I'm still kind of processing everything that I've just experienced. I literally just came back from Egypt like a day ago. So I'm still like processing everything that I experienced.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it a good trip at least?
It was a great trip. Egypt is a place that I've wanted to go for as long as I was like a little kid. I've been obsessed with Egypt, Egyptian mythology, and I wanted to go when the time felt right. And I've tried going before. Don't get me wrong. Like I've tried going, but things just never worked out or whatever. And I went at the beginning of my trip to meet and support displaced families from Gaza.
Mhm.
And that was like a whole experience. Um, Very humbling. I was very humbled by that experience. And also, like, it was a beautiful experience to meet them, but then it was also like really heavy because
Mhm.
we shouldn't be in this place that our government puts us in where we're literally giving money to people that have been displaced because of what our government is doing. So there was like all these like things in play at the same time. And then, yeah, then being in this mystical place, this ancient city, and full of wonder, you're just like, wow, I can't believe I'm here. But then it's like you're 3 hours from Gaza and like all of the stuff going on in the Middle East right now. So it was a lot of like complicated feelings, which I feel like is just the human experience.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And honestly, that kind of aligns with what we're talking about today about transits, right? And our stories around transits, as we live them. And like, and I was looking at your chart, Leo's in your ninth house, which is the house of travel and foreign travel and stuff. And right now we got Mars hanging out there, and it's going to be hanging out for a while back and forth. And this idea of, but also your north nodes in the eighth house in Cancer. And there's some things being lit up with that with Saturn right now, because it's in a conversation with your Saturn. And it got me thinking about like this idea of you coming into through foreign travel, funny enough, this idea of your own understanding of your philosophy
Mhm.
around your values and around justice and around what how you want to engage in these things, and which is really, I think, which has had you go on this kind of journey, because Saturn's involved with Lilith right on Saturn in in your
Mhm.
11th house, right, of asking you then to really reflect upon and release some of the concepts you've had around justice, especially who you want, what you define it by, how it looks, the organizations you do it through and with, right, and your hopes and dreams around it. It's like you're really understanding that there's a different reality happening, and in that reality making, shit's breaking, right? Is
Oh,
that, I don't know if that makes sense.
it was it was a lived embodied experience where I actually met people from Gaza for the first time. It's different from meeting Palestinians in the diaspora who like grew up in the United States, right? I actually met people who lived in tents and who survived the genocide, but their actual journey really begins like now, right? Like trying to
Yeah.
survive within countries that don't recognize them. They're refugees. They can't get citizenship or residency, so they can't work.
Yeah.
And it's like actually meeting them and hearing their stories really put everything into perspective for me in a way that I don't think it would have if I had never met them. So, like I said, it was humbling because, here we are in the United States. And of course, like we have major problems here. Our healthcare system is garbage. And our water and food is being poisoned here too. But the amount of privilege we have just to have an American passport where we can move freely is like, I don't think people really understand what that means. Because even with these people from Gaza, like escaping genocide essentially, like they're trapped there, they can't go anywhere because of their passport. And so it really did, like you said, break my mind in a different way. And just like we have so many resources at our fingertips here, and it's like my question is, what are we waiting for? Like, I feel like all of this peaceful organizing and protesting isn't going to get us the liberation that we're seeking.
But see, that makes sense. And also, this is exactly why I think something I did in my research, right? And also living in the UK was this idea of being stateless and how that is dangerous in a world that we only recognize people through their nationhood. And I think that was what's always been the issue with the whole conversation around Israel and Palestine in general, right? Whether you understand the long, complicated history of it or not, when you deny people the ability to have a statehood, you deny them the ability to have any kind of personhood recognized globally. They cannot move.
Yeah.
That is a problem when you have something like what is going on right now. They cannot move. Refugees are forced to do things that other people would not, because you have no other options. You are literally a fugitive outside of the governing law and system. And
Mhm.
I think that's a fucking reality we're in, right? And it's a reality we've been in since the beginning of the kind of so-called revolutions. And let's go into this idea of Pluto and Aquarius then, because this is where I get very frustrated in the kind of current pop culture analysis of it, and this idea that we're going to all rise up in revolution. We need to understand where we came from 250 years ago is that the same shit was happening. And so those who had to escape because they were not seen as human beings, who we now call the Maroons and the fugitives, literally had to make a way in space with the land they were in. They had to literally live outside the law. And we look upon that as somehow breaking something's breaking rules, but when the rules don't even recognize you as a human because they don't recognize you having statehood or citizenship, then what the fuck else are you supposed to do? And I think that's when realities are colliding right now. And I think what Pluto is showing us is that there is a death of the collective, because the collective was always alive, because our personhood is dependent upon the goddamn state actually maintaining its power. So
Yeah.
this is the catch 22, right? The US falls, great, the nation state falls, but then when you become stateless, where do you go?
Mhm.
Right? If you become stateless, where do you go? So the passport is important, right? When you have a passport itself, it gives you access and it gives you a quote unquote privilege, but that privilege is contingent upon the state you come from still maintaining its goddamn power. So
Yeah.
we're all beholden to an imperial core in some way. So if that's the fucking reality, right? Like what you're saying here, it broke some shit, right? It had you have to reconceptualize concepts of justice in particular because it's your Libra, but all of us, like, we all going through this right now because it's the South node going through as well, right? We have to realize that what we've been fed as justice is really making us docile and complacent to the structures itself.
Mhm.
Right. So I think we're all breaking in that way. And I think that's what the astrology is trying to help us understand that it's
Uh,
coming, change is here, change is coming. So if it's breaking, what is breaking and why? And then what are you going to create in its wake?
yeah, what you said about how this happened 250 years ago with the Maroons, and there's so many instances of where people actually revolted against their oppressor, right? And it reminds me of that quote by Sam Reynolds, who says, astrology doesn't repeat, but it has rhythm. And so what we're witnessing in our timeline is, Syria and Palestine and, Congo and Sudan and all these people. But this has been an ongoing struggle of oppressed people throughout history. It just in this timeline, we are witnessing these folks, right? And like you said, it's like our ability to move freely throughout this world is because the United States has like 800 army bases or military bases around the world. And it's like that is a huge price to pay, that privilege, when it's at the oppression of other people.
But it's also the oppression of ourselves if we think about it too,
Yeah.
because we can't move freely within here. Like
Mhm.
I think that's the lie that we've all been told is in the US because we haven't faced our own genocides. Like we
Mhm.
refuse to acknowledge the ongoing wars that are happening internally to the US, right? We either relegate the indigenous population's various struggles for sovereignty and maintaining themselves outside the state as somehow in the past, or like it's like this kind of docile thing, or we completely ignore Black folks' histories and struggles and the ways of when you really take back who you are in a state that did use you as a labor source, you
Yeah.
still become another commodity while also being told to forget your history, right? So when we forget our own internal history, then we don't understand how it always repeats externally to us, showing us the mirror, right? Because we can't move freely in the US. Them goddamn hurricanes hit. Where are people at? They're still in the FEMA trailers. They're still in like people cannot move freely due to the lack of access too. So we think we are free because you got a passport that gets you to a let's be real, y'all, get y'all to a little resort for 5, 6 days to help you forget. We got to go back and give your body up and labor and stuff. I think there's a harsh reality hitting that what we even consider freedom is really nothing more than surveillance, either by the state or self.
Mhm.
You know, we got to grow up a bit because we don't know how to treat each other. We don't know how to see each other outside of extraction. So we need to come to the table with an understanding of what we are doing and understanding I don't understand you fully. I may not like you fully, but I still see your humanity. That's the difference between how we can do this thing called collaboration versus that motherfucker who says, no, I am always going to be on top and I will continue to use dehumanize you. I'm going on a rant. So yeah, that's how I feel about that.
Uh, I think that brings up a very good point about the different aspects of Pluto and Aquarius, because Aquarian energy is about the collective, right? And about networks. And I've been grappling with this for like probably the last year on how building coalition and being community doesn't mean that you have to be friends with them. Because like my Libra stellium in my 11th house is like I just want to be friends with people and I want to be in community with people that I would be friends with. But what I'm grappling with now is I don't even have to like you, but we have to have a common ground. And I think what this this CEO shooter brought up for a lot of people is that as long as there is a common ground, whether it's right or left or whatever it is, as long as there's a common goal of taking out the oppressor, then we can still be on the same team. What do you feel about this?
So I think that's what we're grappling. Yes. So I say yes and right with that. Yeah. Yes and because internally though, I also know that if you have not done the work of understanding how you are replicating it, I can only trust you so far. Right? I can only trust you so far that
Yeah.
we are taking out the same thing. But I also do not trust that if you had a chance, that if you got to that table, that you wouldn't do the same thing to me if you have not seen my human, right? So this is where we can't be naive. We
Mhm.
have to understand that all of us are still breaking a lot of shit. And as we're breaking stuff, there is going to be replicate. This is hegemony. Again, this is we talk all this theory. This is what it means in practice. And I agree with you about the releasing of that with the Libra. I've said a lot. I've met a lot of folks around our age who have Libra stelliums. Interestingly enough, right? In different in different way. And the Libra stellium in all of us is really asking us to do what our Pluto in Libra has been asking us to do: break our understanding of structures of relationships, justice, and how we interact with them with exchange, right? So I think the South Node is really activating us in this age bracket because we're also going through this astrological middle age of having to be like, wait a minute, justice and peace does not mean people pleasing and giving up and denying my voice
Mhm.
and stuffing my back spine down, like I think we're really grappling with all of that. So there's going to be sexism, there's going to be racism, there's going to be like all that stuff, right? So I have to trust that that's still there even as we are fighting the larger beast, if
Mhm.
that makes sense.
Yeah. I think it's the 1980 to 82 little subgeneration of the millennials
Yes.
where we have that Libra stellium. And I know you even have Jupiter in Libra.
Yeah.
Um, and we all just collectively went through our Pluto square.
that
And
bitch squared, that bitch squared
once,
too.
oh my God, no,
I,
once Pluto re-entered Aquarius, I felt it. I was like, oh.
and see, and I felt it differently. I remember I had to call you. I was like, bitch, what the fuck? I said, I feel this motherfucker now.
Well, okay, so we actually had this planned, what was it, like 3 weeks ago? And it was like right as Pluto was at the like final minute of Capricorn, and we were both like crying to each other. And like it was getting really crunchy, the astrology. And we were like, maybe we should postpone this.
Was going through it. I was like, God damn my chart.
So do you want to share a little bit of like what you were going through and how you were navigating through that time?
Yeah, like, yeah, Onyx, if this helps anybody, please, if you can help me, please help me too. Like, so I have a couple of major oppositions going on at the exact same time. So I've got a 0 degree South Node in Aquarius, 0 degree North Node Leo. So when Pluto was at 29 degrees Capricorn, zero, yeah, I felt that shit. I'm still feeling. So Pluto's hanging out on my South Node. I'm also directly in my Uranus opposition. I got Uranus in the first house, opposing that motherfucker in the seventh house in Taurus, which is right on my Chiron next to my moon natally. Okay. And then I've got a Libra stellium in the 12th house, and the South Node is tap dancing between my Saturn and my Venus, opposing the North Node in Aries in the 6th house. So a bitch is at the crossroads. Like I feel like Bone Thugs and Harmony. Meet me at the crossroads because a bitch is lonely and I'm tired of being here by my goddamn self. Okay? so so then so this is my fourth again. So all of these things at the time I was talking to Laura crying, my mama and I got into it again, right? And it literally is about a lot of things about past and history. And also my brother, I don't think I've talked about this, my brother died in August of an overdose, and we buried him in September. So literally when I turned 36 and no 43 shit, when I turned 43 and went into the 8th house, my brother died. So that shit can be literal, y'all. House of death. And here he was, and he's a Gemini too. So we're dealing with issue with we're not even sure if his body is buried where they say it is. When I say this shit is literal, it is literal. So Pluto is literally ushering in my dead in the fourth house. So my mother and I got into it. I'm not going to talk about what that was, but it solidified some things about having to face a harsh reality of what and who is family. And some family sometimes is not blood, and that is something that I will be very honest with if it helps anybody else. My ancestors have been actually trying to help me with. So, and that's even harder when your ancestors are trying to help you understand that sometimes the blood family you have living right now is not the family you need right now. So there was a lot of grief, a lot of grief, a lot of death, and a lot of re-understanding what my business is. So it's also that sixth house of everyday work and routines and Libra and like all the first and seventh, like I was thinking about who I want to be in a relationship with. I'd broken up with somebody like 3 times and finally had to like block, like I was trying to figure out what I want my business to be because I didn't want to keep doing the same things that were draining me. And then I had to come to terms with the fact that I'm utterly exhausted and understand that no matter how big my body is, I'm 6'3.25". Shit. Like I keep growing literally as I shed too. And every time I'm crying or every time like I'm really understanding what I have to let go of, my back does stand taller. So I have grown as well the last year, a quarter of an inch, like not even joking.
Wow.
Right, like because that's how much it was holding on to the body, right? So the physical things also happen because it's my first house of self, Uranus, seventh house opposition of one-on-one relationships. The more I let go and transmute that, because that Chiron is real, I learn a lot through relationships. Like you learn a lot through experiencing life, Laura, as a Sagittarius rising. Because of my placements, I learn a lot through relationships.
Yeah.
And so I had to figure out and get clear about what I truly wanted in a relationship and own that. Like not try to dance around to that Libra, not trying to compromise all the time. I realized that I was compromising me. And then that was enough. That was another set of grief. Like once I called and I did a lot of ritual. I do ritual. I actually do real ritual. I did a very couple of intense rituals after I talked with you that were essentially about calling my energy back. And as I felt that energy, that's when the anger came back. The anger is here because I realized how much shit I gave away.
Yeah.
And I know you know this because I see it all in your damn chart. Like, like I right now, like you like shit. I'm a bad bitch, but goddamn, I was giving all that shit away, and then I was letting you in my. I was like, you were in my house, girl. Bye. You
I know.
gotta have A, B, C, and D now because It's not about what I bring to the table. It's understanding what I really do need, what my
Yes.
body needs, what the care I need, the what I will not tolerate anymore. So yeah, all that's happening right now, y'all. And I'm still in this bitch. Now my nodes are activated. My nodes are hitting the Neptune, and they're also hitting the transiting. My nodes. Like right now, I'm in like this fate. Like it's irritating. People talk, oh fate, fuck fate. Y'all kicking my ass right now, right? I'm talking about Ori, like, bitch, why did we sign up for this time? I want to redo. Like what the and that's what's literally happening. I'm having a conversation with my higher self because I'm in this rectangle of like my natal nodes in a conversation with the transiting nodes. I'm in a mystic rectangle right now.
Oh, that's exciting. I mean,
Yeah.
I looked at your chart as I was having some Mercury retrograde issues. I was like, so classic. Thank you. Um, I definitely think that after Mercury and Jupiter go direct, you're going to figure out how to receive more resources for what you do because Mercury and Jupiter are in your financial houses and you're in a you're in an eighth house year, which is ruled by Mercury. So the Mercury retrogrades really impact you the most. And yeah, and Mercury is one of the gods of commerce. So I do believe when they go forward, because they're in each other's signs right now, you're going to figure out a way to receive more for what you're giving because you give so much. I mean, anybody who's a creator in the creator economy at this moment in time, we're trying to figure out how can we be authentic, true to ourselves, and start divesting from this capitalist system while also receiving what we need to survive, right? And thrive.
Yes.
And not just like be the pawns of our system. So I think it's really beautiful because like I always say, you're in this really crunchy time because you are one of the people that are leaders of this movement, in whatever way you believe that to be. I ultimately believe it's through creativity and dreaming, which is like pretty on brand with what you do, because Jupiter rules your fifth house of creativity and your financial house, the second house. So I think Jupiter working its thing in your eighth house. And when Jupiter moves through our eighth house, it's actually, I know you don't feel this right now, but like a benevolent time of receiving, you know?
Me and Jupiter having conversations every night. I'm like, bitch, come on now.
Yeah, it's so interesting because like people think that Jupiter just means good luck. But Jupiter is expansion, and sometimes our expansion comes at us going through our own reckoning, you know, like, and I've only experienced breakups and really cataclysmic experiences with a Jupiter transit because that was the way in which I needed to feel freedom, you know?
And you're ruled by Jupiter too as a Sag rising in that first
Yeah.
house. So the self many times, and this I think we have to realize, and I want to go back to you real quick, Laura, with the Sag rising with people. You have to realize with that first house, and Jupiter needs, and when Jupiter is expanding, if it needs to expand you, in order to expand the body, it has to break something.
Mm-hmm. Oh
Like a
yeah.
Sag rising is not necessarily easy, y'all. When you're Jupiter led, when you're Jupiter ruled, so Sag and Pisces rising, in order for y'all to expand in the first house, you got to break something, and
Oh yeah.
it's parts of the body, right? So yeah, I'm glad you said that.
Yeah. So I like ultimately, I think this is just making you closer. All of these crunchy transits are just leading you closer to your destiny and like what you're meant to be doing in this particular time period. Um, but obviously, it's not easy, right? Because you have to like keep breaking parts of your beliefs and like who you are.
It is.
I
Well, you know
know.
what's been really cool? What's been really cool is that I realize I really am a poet. Like the poems are here. Like they're coming down. Like I performed them Sunday. I realize I'm a fucking Leo. A bitch likes to perform. I said,
Hmm.
this is cute. I ain't gonna can hang out with a band and speak some shit and people engage and I ain't gotta do a PowerPoint? Bitch. Higher ed ain't got shit on me now. Like so I
Yeah,
love it. Like
you're entering your Leo era, you know?
yeah, so no, so it's been so that's so I agree with that and thank you for because I think anybody going through these major transit, especially at our age, right? Again, between that we're 43, but like that 36 to 45 era, it really is like truly crunchy ass time because you are being faced with so many constructs of yourself and
Mhm.
being asked, do you want to do this? Do you like this? Do you like the people around you? Do you like yourself? And like the more honest you are, the more you break. That's the reality, right? The more honest with yourself you are, the harder it feels. But the least honest with yourself you are,
Yeah.
the more you literally decay. So either
Mhm.
way, you're gonna die.
Yes. Parts of you are need to die,
Yeah.
actually. It's so interesting because I was obviously in Egypt and they have, you know, Egypt right now is predominantly Arab and 90% Muslim. So their form of religion is different than the ancient Egyptians that founded Egypt, right? It's like Egyptian mythology. And so it's interesting hearing their perspective sometimes. And one Egyptian man was like, you have so much anger inside of you and you're too open. And I'm like, but those are not like bad things. I feel like I feel so proud that I'm able to feel anger because anger shows me that there's an injustice and I use that energy and I transmute that to do something, to change something. And even within all of the injustices that I've witnessed, I'm still able to keep a soft and open heart and still see the best in humanity, even though that's tested a lot. And I feel like I don't know. It was interesting to hear the way in which I was being perceived and me being like, no, like that is me, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a beautiful thing, you know?
Yes. Yeah. But I think that's a beautiful way to harness. Honestly, that's a beautiful way to harness the Mars and Leo energy because that
Mhm.
literally is your ninth house. Like
Yeah.
that's your house of foreign travel, philosophies, and that kind of stuff, but the house of God.
Mhm.
Right. So if you think about the house of God and you went to a space of the gods,
Yes.
right?
Yes. It's so true.
Right? Like it's it so and it's opposing right now. That's why I asked earlier was are you in opposition with a woman? But like that makes more sense about this idea. You are opposing concepts, traditional collective concepts of femininity and
Mhm.
feminine and womanhood, right? And how you express and understand that anger as a way as you are coming into that Uranus first house of redefining your sense of self.
Mhm.
Right. So I think you're prepping, it's like a prep for you to, because it's going into, I really do see with your, when you have an eighth house North Node, y'all, something I got to think about is that you're always trying to kind of you're always in exile. There's a way you learn through exile in one way, shape, or form. You have to move away from what you know, usually your home, your environment, your community, or your values, in order to figure out what it is that you truly believe and who you can kind of come together with. That's the resource house, right? And so it's in Cancer. So it's like, how do you go from Capricorn? So it's like, how do you allow yourself to change your values? Because Capricorn can be very stubborn, even though it's a cardinal sign. It's still Earth. All Earth signs are still going to be more grounded in what they believe. How do you allow yourself to change your sense and values, whether it be about justice, money, yourself, or where you come from, to be able to go into a different understanding of a collective? The collective being Cancer, the mother, right, of caring and of how you then bring people together, right, or how you come together with people with shared resources through a lens of care, right,
Yes.
versus a lens of obligation. That's very different.
It's very
Right?
different. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
but similar to what you were going through in our first call or our first therapy session, um, this idea of like taking your power back. And I was sharing with Dr. Nicole that I don't remember when it was. It was the beginning of this year when we did like a trade. I read your chart and you read mine. And you were saying something about like a woman that was trying to take advantage of me and I had to stand up for her and ultimately I would choose myself. And at the time it was like already starting to play out, but then it came to a head in June and I had to leave that situation because it was just getting really toxic for me. And for me, that experience really played out my Pluto in Capricorn, like the last degree story, because again, I was like, why do I give my power away? Why do I give my resources, my talent, my skills for less than what I'm worth? And ultimately, I walked away because they weren't willing to pay me what I asked for. So, but again, it's so frustrating because you're like, why do I do this constantly? Why am I back here again? And it's like almost you kind of have this pity party and you feel sorry for yourself because you're like, why do I continue to do this to myself? But then how I like transmuted it was, well, this is going to be the last time. I'm going to like call on my power back to me and not let that happen again. So I was like, goodbye, Pluto and Capricorn. It's been real for 16 years. Please don't come after me because I'm gonna like not let this happen again.
But that makes sense though too, because and this is a great way to talk about 2025, right? Because there's a way that we get the very, very beginning of the energy of change, like real
Yeah.
societal change, right? And so we're really seeing what we require, what is required of change is that we have to do a lot of space making. So all of this stuff, everything you've went through, everything I went through, like all of this kind of all of us, this breaking societally, individually, to really get down to what it is that we truly think we want, or at least what we don't want, right? As we go into all these signs changing, and Pluto ushered that in with Aquarius.
Mhm.
And I think that this is now the time in which we are going through now reckoning of our responsibility of the
Mhm.
collectives we want to have, because It's really about who do we platform and why, who do we give our authority up to and why. Because if we say we want these kind of collectives that care for one another, then what is care when we won't acknowledge our own needs and wants? Right, when we always give it up to something else. And I think I'm saying that because of where the nodes are. So the first major shift of 2025 is going to be the nodes shifting from this Aries Libra, which has kicked all of our asses, right? And it's really has shown us states, our Aries, and justice, people, women in particular, right? With Libra, we're going into Virgo and Pisces, and goddamn, you think it's been weird with Neptune there for a long time and Saturn. You put the North Node there after coming out of Aries, hothead's going to cool off, right? This is really going to give us an understanding of how much people are grounded in a sense of self, or are they more comfortable with going with somebody else? So the rise of religion once again, and spirituality and cults is here. So I don't know what you think about that, Laura.
You think that it's going to get more religious, more extreme, more cultish, or are we going to like question those things?
You know what I think it's going to be? I think it's going to be more criticalness of established religions, right?
Mhm.
But I also think that, just like I've been watching a lot of these documentaries about the cults from the 1970s and shit, the 60s, this shit's fascinating, right? They all started off as experiments. They were all community experiments, and also by scammers. So I said, goddamn, white folks love to be scammed. I said, y'all couldn't smell the motherfucker a mile away. Like, you believed his story? I'm like, damn.
Yes,
And then I'm watching, so
I know.
I'm like, woo, child. There's a reason why certain demographics be going to certain places. But what I do think, but I do think, but I do think though, we are going to have to be careful about what the new kind of spirit is. Right, because
Yes.
these are all spirits, these are all energies, right? The shit's got to, like you said earlier, transmute. Well, how are we transmuting? So even if you leave the church, right, and you into me and Donnell actually had a good conversation about this. A Thoughts While High that I recorded, and we recorded on Sunday. It's going to come out, and we were just saying, like, once you stop intellectualizing deconstruction and you start feeling it, oh, this is where people stop, because of your feeling, and that's what you're seeing with you, Lord, the anger. That's a real thing, right? You got to look at everything differently, like it really is a true physical breaking. But I think Pisces, because it rules addiction and it rules escapism, if we don't want to feel, I think there's going to be a lot of escaping into other concepts that skirt around, right? The reality of Virgo releasing, right? And because Virgo's still the body releasing, and having to have us critically engage with the structures that are supposed to also provide some type of foundation in care and health too. So,
Yeah. I'm just thinking about Saturn and Neptune in the sign of Aries, which is like,
yes.
I don't know, like, I just feel like what you were saying really resonated with me about what we believe in and like what we give authority to, because I can already see it playing out that like these vigilantes and this vigilantism that's already starting to happen. And yeah, I think
Mm-hmm.
believing in something that is completely different than, because Pisces is like mutable water, right? It's like collective consciousness. It's so spiritual and ooey gooey. And then Aries is like war. It is very martial. So I'm just wondering like how the spirituality is going to morph in that way. If it's going to be more about like a leader, like a leader versus I don't know. These are just thoughts and ideas that are coming through my head right now.
No, but let's roll with that, because that's Saturn. Because it doesn't. Who goes first? I think
I
Saturn
wrote
goes
them
first.
down.
Okay, yeah.
Neptune enters Aries on March 30th. Saturn enters Aries on May 24th.
That's right. So Neptune goes first. So
Mhm.
let's think about Neptune, right? So Neptune is the planet that we really cannot understand and know because it's mysterious, right? It rules the depths of the oceans. So it's been hanging out in its depths and oceans for a long time, and now it's going to dry out.
Mhm.
So I think that will start. To me, I keep thinking about history.
Mhm.
And this is what I mean by that. I think about the stories of history and how they have gotten muddled, they've been nebulous, right, for a long time. And so as people start to figure out the Pisces North Node energy, I think we're going to start to see the use of stories as a
Mhm.
weaponization to get people to buy into certain authority heads, because that Saturn is going to follow next, because Saturn rules tradition. So I think we're going to start to see the rise of new traditions,
Mhm.
right, that are going to use story making, storytelling, historical context, right, to do so as a way to draw. So that's how one way I see it, or one
Mhm.
way it could play out.
Yeah. And, Saturn is in its fall in Aries because it's
Mhm.
exalted in Libra. And Saturn does very well in Libra, justice, order, all the things that Saturn loves. But when it's in the sun in Aries, when it's a little wild and martial and it's angry, Saturn is like, ugh, you know?
Yes.
It's kind
So
of
who
what
do we
it
give
kind
our
of functions.
authority to?
Yeah, who does
Yeah. So
authority to?
And I think that's where we have to ask ourselves now. The Pluto and Aquarius, right, is having what's the collective responsibility, right? Because if we're going to make a collective, Aquarius could still be authoritarian.
Mhm.
Have y'all met an Aquarius sometimes who is committed to their ideology? Shit, like
Jeff
and
Bezos is an
that's
Aquarius.
what'd you say?
Jeff Bezos is an Aquarius and he has Saturn in Aquarius. So it's not necessarily like he thinks he's doing something great for humanity with Amazon, right? But clearly he is also ruining this planet by being, a trillionaire and not paying his workers equitably. So this is why I get nervous when people get excited about Pluto and Aquarius because I'm like, the last time Pluto was in Aquarius, the cotton gin was invented and that just like expedited slavery,
Yes,
so
yes.
like with every man-made invention it's at the cost of people,
The human. So let's
human.
talk about this, Laura. So let's talk, yes. So because also think about Pluto and Aquarius, it's technology and AI,
Hmm.
right? And so this is a lot of the things I'm moving a lot of my work into is I talk about what does it mean to be human, because as technologies develop, we lose our humanity in favor of the technology, even though all these technologies rely upon the same goddamn resource, the earth,
Hmm.
right? So we're going back to the same root, but yet because of the way that some of these colonial projects have been constructed, of always thinking it must be linear and progressive at time. This is a Saturn rule thing as well, right? So time is not linear or progressive, but is made constructed in that way. And how we then, in order to keep that story going of this linearity, that we have to consistently then dehumanize ourselves to keep up with technologies that we don't even understand. We're now moving into a time. They just had these things online about Chat GPT now lying so that it can maintain itself, right? Chat GPT like, yeah, bitch, I can do all of this, and it's like, no, it can't, but it just didn't want to shut down.
Hmm.
So technology is only as good as its creator. But
Hmm.
if its creator has lost its humanity and soul and tried to create a new life form, that new life form will then become the new human at the expense of those that created it. But then who is left by those who have been dehumanized to begin with?
Yeah.
Right? I think this was the cautionary tale, a parable of the sower. It was not for people to go around and replicate earthseed, y'all. It was an example of what happens when we give up our authority to something else. And
Hmm.
what happened at the beginning of that book? They were putting their hopes on a goddamn space mission, even though people on the ground literally had no fucking food and protection.
Yes.
And that opened up what? Pure authoritarianism. Come on, y'all. It's not about sitting here and glorifying what Lauren did. It's about us not learning the lesson of history that if we don't take back our humanity, that's why her being empathetic was a detriment, because the society could not handle people actually feeling the humanity, And so therefore, Lauren had to do a different strategy. She had to become somewhat cold, because if not, her ass would have been dead.
Yeah.
Right. So we also need to learn from the strategy. She was not some perfect protagonist. She did what she had to do to fucking survive.
Hmm.
Right. Because she also believed her reality. And I think that's what's going to happen now, too. Like, we have to come back to an understanding of the human and understanding that it is more than one thing. The universal was the lie. Pluto
Hmm.
and Aquarius also brought in the universal. This idea of one humanitarian, just like you said with Jeff, right? So you think you know better because you have reduced the human down to a universal. That was the lie.
Yeah. And even in the parable of the sower, everybody puts their hopes into the president that was going to be elected, right? And even in the book, Lauren says like, oh, everyone, all the older people are banking on this president to change everything, and the president got reelected. And I'm like, is this like, she was, Octavia Butler was like a seer for sure. And if anything, the president got reelected and things still went to shit. So it's
Yes.
again like you can't put your hopes on another person because that again gives your power away. And I think that really reflects the Mars opposition to Pluto that we've kind of been feeling all
Yes.
year long since the summer to the end of this year. It's like this balance between like your authority, the how you're giving your power away, how do you stand up to your fears, how do you take action, all of these things.
Yes, Laura. Yeah, absolutely right. And in particular, redefining what it means to resist, what it means to grapple with anger, right? Because you mentioned the CEO shooter. I have a lot of mixed feelings about it, right? Because my thing is, it's white on white crime. While at the same time, it's also indicative of the structural oppression that we all face because we are living in a racial capitalist system based upon a white supremacist understanding of relationality, right? Okay. But also, we know what happens when white men shoot each other,
Mhm.
right? Other people suffer the consequences. So there's also a way that, and then people like backing up, and now there's the Luigi is people talking about he cute and all that stuff. Like, I mean, I guess, girl, but like at the end, like like, but at the end of the day, this whole true crime obsession got you also being very okay with the same type of punitive measures without you questioning what is the consequence of it doing.
Mhm.
And then when you ask the consequences, it does not mean that we're not going to, that violence is not going to be there. We live in a violent society. But I think that we have not grappled with the reality of what that has done to our understanding of humanity and what comes after. Because fine, you shoot these motherfuckers, what comes next?
Mhm.
Like, and we have to, that's the dreaming part, I think. Like, that's why I go to dreaming so much, because we have to imagine. If you can't just do the action and put your hands up, right? And then say, oh, well, then you figure it out. No one has the template. So if we're afraid to imagine and dream and talk about what comes next, but you just want to react, then I say that that is a short term solution that's going to get us to the same consequence, right?
Yeah.
Um,
People aren't angrier. It's so bizarre to me.
because
I'm
it's
like,
scary.
yeah, I guess it's scary, but it's like, it's the most real feeling that, like, none of this is normal.
Mhm.
Everything that we are witnessing is not normal. And to act like everything is okay and, and as a human being multidimensional, right? Like, I constantly hold the fact that I'm grateful to be alive and I'm grateful for so many things and I want to live my life with joy. And at the same time, I'm constantly angry at having to witness state violence on my phone, And I'm constantly oscillating between these things. But it's my anger that makes me feel the most alive.
But
Like,
when did you start getting angry, Laura?
I've always been angry. You can even ask my family. Like, I
Expressing
just,
it outwardly in the
yes, expressing it with my words, expressing it with my like literal like behavior, telling people how I truly feel in the moment, like you fucked up, you made me angry. I've always been like this, and I've always been I guess, labeled as like an angry, rageful person. And I think it's because people don't tap into that's why when they experience it from me, it's so foreign that it scares them. And I'm
Mhm.
like, this is the part of me that I love the most, actually.
Yes. But I would also argue, though, you are learning how to express it in a way that honors your authenticity versus having it channeled through the institutions that you thought you had to put it through.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, because if you think about even your own work, like you can, that's why I love your work, because again, you actively talk about your transitions in the public as you were going through your own process of really deepening your own, like from the manifestation book you have in the background, right, to like your astrology and how you read and all that stuff in your own journey, right? You can also see how, as you've taken back, how have you transmuted your anger for you and not given it to institutions, right, or to other people to then help them. It really has broke some things open for you to be able to really have your own set of compass, morals, and values, in which that anger is like, you got me all fucked up. So we're gonna do it this way now.
I think it's because I have Mars in its like detriment, and that's what I found out about planets in its opposite sign. It's not that they're weak,
Libra.
but they express themselves in different ways.
Yes. And okay, let's talk about that, Laura, because you're Mars is in Libra. And what always irritates me, because I got Mars in Cancer, so both of us got our Mars in places that's supposed to be, right? But then think about Cancer and Mars, I mean Cancer and Libra, what they represent. Cancer is the moon, mother.
Hmm.
Libra is a Venetian sign, right? And how we live in societies, the patriarchal understandings of those things, even in the ancient, let's be real, like we have to really even interrogate some of the ancient understanding, because them motherfuckers were damp. Everything was dark and damp. You know, a Taurus, y'all are lazy, sloth. I'm like, God damn, shit. Who hurt you? Somebody hurt your feelings when you wrote that shit. God. I be hurting my feelings reading that shit. Like, damn. So, it is a different way, because if we only understand the energy of Mars as aggressive, as force, as violence, as top down, like in Capricorn, I'm telling you, a Capricorn Mars is a hot fucking mess, many times.
I'm literally afraid of Capricorn, Mars and Capricorn people. They are very controlling. They are
Yes,
very intense.
yes, and I've dated a few of them, women. Yeah, Capricorn stelliums with that shit ain't no. I'm sorry, our energies do not align. I wish them well, but ain't no goddamn way again, right? Because my Mars in Cancer, again, opposition, right? My Mars in Cancer is like, baby, you can't logic your way through your feelings. You sitting there talking about you ain't emotional, but you sitting there throwing a temper tantrum. You acting like the goddamn baby. I'm supposed to baby you because I can understand and understand the strategy of emotionality. A Libra understands what real compromise is. A Libra understands that the negotiation table is the first and the last defense you want to be at. Because to go to war is a consequence, and that is going to cost you what? Resources and money,
Yeah.
right? And also goodwill, because longevity at the table is more important than the short term war. And I think we don't understand war. We don't understand what happens after war. If I got to compromise with you, and also a Libra, and let's be real, a Mars Libra understands how to use sex and how to use sensuality at the negotiation table in a way that facilitates peace long term versus having us go to that fucking Aries war, right? So it's valuable, but
Yeah.
that's demonized because that's actual real power. So y'all
Yeah.
got to rethink these detriment, exaltations, and falls in context of society, right? Because it'll really help us now understand how to work with astrology better here.
Yeah. And speaking of Mars and Cancer, I think Mars and Cancer people are really great at taking action for care. Like I think of Cancer as care and nurturing. And like you said, in a patriarchal society, that's like care, what? Like that's not as important as capitalism and, competition. But Mars in the sign of Cancer is protecting what is sacred, protecting the most vulnerable people.
Yes.
And I think that's why we have to go through this retrograde, is remembering that. Because everybody has Cancer and Leo in their chart.
Hmm.
It just so happens that Dr. Nicole has it natally. But
A bitch be feeling, y'all. A bitch be feeling.
I think it's such an important thing to like integrate in all of us.
No, I completely agree with that, right? And it's also something too, like people really get it twisted just because, the aggression of Capricorn and Aries, people think that that's going to be a more dangerous Mars. I argue a Libra and Cancer Mars are more dangerous because you piss that off and they're done, and the only recourse is for you to die, then you will die. That's not even a joke. That's not even a joke. Okay, so the logical last thing we have to do to make peace is you gotta go. Okay, here comes the poison, y'all. Here comes a little slippy, slippy, hippy, hippy, right? We ain't gotta be bang, bang, but we can be sip, sip, right? Like, there's many ways to skin this cat, and I think that's also something we have to remember too. And so I think so. Part of 2025 with this change, right, is Mars is also having a conversation with us, and Venus will be retrograding as well earlier next year too, right? So these are very personal placements of how we integrate in the change, right, around our relationship to war, to sex, to exchange, to relationship, to justice, and all that.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting that right now we have Mercury retrograde in the sign of Sagittarius and Mars retrograde in Leo. And then in March, we're going to have a Mercury retrograde in Aries and a Venus retrograde in Aries. So there's something to be said first about the fire signs and like what you were saying about like the fire element, but also the fact that the retrogrades in the personal planets are going simultaneously with Mercury.
No, you're right. You're right. And then let's be real. So Mercury, you mentioned earlier, rules commerce, but
Mhm.
Mercury is also the crossroad. Mercury ushers it's
Yeah.
that trickster energy, right? There is no gender. So yes,
Mhm.
y'all planets sometimes don't have no gender, right? It's been non-binary for a long time. So,
Yeah, it's
but
the
you're
only yeah, it's the only god that travels through the underworld.
exactly. And every tradition has that, right? Every tradition has somebody who can traverse between the worlds, right? And so if you think about Mercury ruled by Gemini, the duality, the twin, and then Virgo, which rules the body. So there's different logics too that we have at play here. But I do think it's interesting because we are entering into an era of fire and air, coming out of water and earth in our Aries. So when we talk about the new beginnings, y'all, you better take this winter and rest because that
Yes.
goddamn stellium coming up in Aries, I was like, God damn, we all gonna be a hothead. Shit.
My solar return chart for next year is wild because I'm an Aries sun. There's like Aries, it's like Aries, Sun, Mercury, Venus, Saturn, or like Neptune, and I think the moon or something. And
The
I'm
moon,
like,
like it's like almost all the inner planets, and
I know, I'm like,
yeah.
what is gonna happen?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that shit is like that is a dead ass like new beginning. It's like you want to spring, you want to open up. I think that is going to be the opening of change, right? Like it's here. Like we are now entered into a new element and we have to understand how to work with fire and air. We have to. Right. And right now, Jupiter's like, y'all motherfuckers can't work with a goddamn piece of air because I
Oh,
give y'all a little bit of information and y'all go crazy.
yes. Information overload. And that's a good point because fire and air are like yang expressions if you don't like the word masculine. So it's all about taking action. And what we are being called to in the next 2 years, I think 2025 and 2026 are literally the 2 years that are going to define our century. So much is going to change and I feel it in my bones and so much so quickly that people really need to work on their shit if you have not already. Like be very clear on who you are and be very clear on like our common goal because again, like you were saying, you can be very influenced by these cult leaders and these false prophets who are like, this is the road to whatever, you know?
Mm-hmm. No, but real for real, and that's why I was even talking with Donnell about this. It's like we have to be careful, even if you're leaving the church, whatever the established Abrahamic church is, right? And you're going into a kind of either ATR or more of a lineage or indigenous practice. That doesn't mean that you're not having and taking that energy and spirit of that Christian white patriarch with you. You got to break that shit. Because
Hmm.
then you look what you're doing is you're looking for another guru, another prophet, another oracle, and only you can save yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So who is the self you are saving? That is the breaking. And I think Aries with all that energy is, and the North Node's been here. The North Nodes are trying to get us to understand that we have to release feeling as if we have to not acknowledge our needs. Because again, Libra's Venus energy, that is to me the embodiment of the pleasures of life,
Hmm.
right? That is how we express that through our relationships and through justice and really what love is. What is love? Aries being Mars. And what are you fighting for?
What are
You know
you
what I'm saying?
for?
What the
Yes.
fuck are you fighting for? You know, like, and if you're not fighting for your goddamn soul so that you can be with other souls, then what are you doing? Right. I think that, and so for you, I love you the way you talk about the fire and like, no, that's cute, but no, we well, I don't know why you ain't doing shit. Like, okay, girl.
I say that because I think a lot of people have just accepted and become
Yes.
complacent, right? And I think no, like you are here at this timeline with all of us for a very specific reason, and your job is to remember why. Remember why you are here, and it's all internal work. And I think a lot of people have just been like, I wish a comet just hit Earth, or like let everything be apocalyptic. And I'm like, that's exactly what they want you to do. They just want you to give up and like just accept the status quo. And I'm like, no, we did not come here to be handmaids. Sorry. Like, no. I am I
Yes.
refuse.
No, I absolutely agree. And to me, that's where the Mars comes in. What are you fighting for and what are you angry about? Because I've always been angry about this idea that we just give up the human to the colonial. Like I'm
Mhm.
like, they have no fucking right to claim that. This is why I understand Afro pessimism, but I push back against the full premise of it because to me, pessimism is nothing more than another Janus face of us buying into our colonizers' oppressive understanding of us.
Yes.
Right? Right. This is Benedict.
And just as a side note, Jupiter will enter Cancer June 9th, and Uranus will enter Gemini July 7th. So Pluto is already in Aquarius. The other two outer planets and Saturn will move into different signs, and Jupiter as well. So there is this huge collective energy shift in 2025. Neptune and Saturn will go back into Pisces like sometime in the fall, and it's retrograde, but like the energetic shift is palpable. Like we are in a different era of
Yeah.
time. We're witnessing it in real time. We're witnessing multiple once in a lifetime transits all at once. Yes. And energy is dynamic and it's not fixed. It's mutable. So we have the power, knowing what we know now, to change the future in this now moment. That's what manifestation is. So again, if you just resign yourself and say we're fucked, then we're fucked, you know? But if you say like I have the power to change it based on what I can do locally and around me, then if we all do it together, we can change the future.
Yes. And so this is where another aspect I think of Pluto and Aquarius is coming in, honestly, and can be really expanded upon when Jupiter goes into Cancer, interestingly enough, is this idea of why we need to dream right now by working with our dead. Because it will allow us to understand and see other possibilities, to remember other histories, other templates, other
Mhm.
times, even before the colonial, but even during it, in which our people figured out different ways to survive, right? And
Yes.
not just survive, but thrive, right? I think we like to romanticize our ancestors a lot without understanding them, that they were complicated beings who didn't necessarily always use the same terminologies or were not even nice people, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes you're not calling down the nice ones, you're calling down the ones that they'll take a fucking machete or a gun and pop somebody off because they understand the reality of some shit. Right. So you
Mhm.
also gotta understand to work with that energy and tell them, okay, Papa, do pee pee poo, but go back into the see the light, right? We're gonna elevate, we elevating now, we elevating,
Yeah.
right? So I think that this will help us understand why action sometimes is not the fist. Sometimes the action really is not just the rest, but the strategic rest that allows us to figure out what it is we actually need and want and
Mhm.
then push that forward, you know?
Mhm. That's why I like working with Mars energy because it's strategic.
Yes.
And what you just said about the different ways, it'd be interesting to study like different people and their Mars signs and how they use that. Because again, like you said, action isn't just about fists and fighting or resistance, right? It's not as literal sometimes as like the resistance fighters, but it could be in the form of strategy and like planning, right? Of a Virgo Mars, for example. Um, but again, this is all about like knowing your own skill sets, knowing your natal chart and how it's being activated right now so that you can express the highest version of those placements.
Yes, Laura, I love that. Yeah, because that's exactly what it is. Because it will tell you, your Mars will tell you how you strategize the
Mhm.
best, right? Or the way, or how, or the best ways you should strategize. And both of us, like again, you have that Libra Mars, so understandings of coalition and compromising community are very important for you, and that is how you understand strategy. But you got to figure out the right people and groups, right, to be with. So that
Right.
the releasing that's happening right now.
Mhm.
And then my Mars in Cancer, it really is, I call it strategic dreaming, right? Because it's in Cancer, it's in the ninth house, and that's, yeah, it's higher education, but it's also this idea of spirituality, right? So how do we find God in us to be able to come into the dreams that can give us different ways to live, right? So I think if you look at your zodiac sign that your Mars is in, it will help you understand the ways that you can work with your own creative passion, energy, and also your own anger.
Yeah. And how you get angry, how you deal with conflict, right? Sometimes my Mars in Libra, it's also retrograde. It annoys me because I just want to do my thing, but I found through experience that it's way easier to get people on board with honey versus vinegar, like sweet talking, diplomacy, flirting, like you said, charisma. Unfortunately, Bill Clinton has Mars in Libra, AOC has Mars in Libra. It's like being able to win people over through charm is going to get me way further than like the ways in which I actually want to be, which is like, fuck, you know?
Yeah, because especially because it's right next to your Saturn retrograde and then a little bit later Pluto
Yes.
retrograde, right? So like for you, especially when it comes to authority figures for you, it really does come down to smoothing it out and winning them over,
Oh my God.
right? And
Yes.
in institutions, like it really does, like because if not, like they will come down on you. Like that's the reality of it. They because Saturn is exalted in
Mhm,
Libra,
mhm,
right? So you have to know the I always say that for you, especially Laura, and folks with this kind of Libra stellium with that Saturn there, you and with Pluto, you got to know the institution's organization structure and laws better than the structure does, because
mhm,
that allows you to maneuver and use them
mhm.
as you will. That
Yes.
is strategy, right? That is how you break internally the kind of so-called policies and procedures that cannot be broken. Again, Saturn, because again, you have
Mhm.
this kind of this microcosm of this Libra stellium. Then the strategy is to understand that organization better than it does, and then do it better than them. Therefore, having them have to come to the table of negotiation in
Yeah.
one way, shape, or form, right?
Yes, exactly. You have to like know your oppressor better than you do. Exactly. So
So,
what transits are you looking forward to the most or least next year?
so I think personally, I was looking down at what I had written. Um, I'll be glad when Jupiter gets the fuck out of my eighth house.
You're like, I already knew.
So it's a lot of grief with that. So I need Jupiter to get out of my eighth house and stop expanding on all that and expand into my ninth house and get me traveling. Okay, get me back on the speaking circuit. Get me back
Yes,
on. Get my dreaming going. Right, expand. My God,
yes. And
that's
it's
what I'm.
exalted in Cancer, so
Yes. And that's where my Mars is. I'm like, you better tap dance on that bit. Bring some, let it rain. Shit, melodies from heaven. Come on down. I got ready. What about you?
I think same. I think Jupiter in Gemini is, again, not in its home sign, it's in the opposite sign. So it's just bringing all kinds of havoc in all the ways. And so I'm excited for Jupiter in Cancer because that's a lovely transit. And I don't know, call me like crazy, but I'm excited to see what happens with all of these outer planets going into other signs. Like I'm hopefully optimistic that this is going to be, especially with Trump's presidency, this is going to be the kick in the ass that everybody needs. And I was like praying during November, and I'm like, I just trust in the divine so much that whatever is going to get us to the highest timeline is what's meant to be. And unfortunately, fortunately, however you see it, Trump is going to expedite change.
I agree with that.
I think
No,
this
I
just,
agree with that.
I just think that if it was Kamala, people would have like sat back for 4 years and been complacent, and then 4 years woken up again and been like, blue no matter who. And I just think Trump, like, he is an embodiment of an archetype that needs to wake people up personally. And it's the Uranus return of the United States. And
Mhm.
sometime next year to 2026, Uranus and Gemini will trine Pluto and Aquarius.
Mm.
And Neptune and Saturn will come together in a conjunction in Aries. These are like
Yeah.
monumental new paradigm shifting aspects. So again, like I'm excited, hopefully optimistic to see like what sorts of changes come about. Um, I'm like,
But this is all we can do because again, that energy of Uranus is also chaotic. You don't know what the fuck's going to happen. So a part of you
oh,
is going to be like, well, shit,
mhm,
all I can do is what I can do. But are you doing something, right? What you were
right,
saying earlier about like what you doing.
right, right. Because it's Uranus is a shocking, unexpected planet, and so you might as well hold the highest intention, right? Of maybe it needs to wake up more of the collective. We're at a mass awakening now more
Yes.
than ever. So
And
yes.
then you'll be going into Uranus opposition then, because you're an early degree Uranus and Sag. So
Yes.
so
Woo!
So them first seventh house things, y'all, it be doing some things. It does some things, a sense of self and who you want to be with. And I think that's really important because once we really understand who we are and who and our needs and our desires, and then who we can share those with, that is how we form the real collectives that can actually provide care. And I think that's what Jupiter and Cancer will also expand upon as the need of care. We need care. The
Mhm.
humans, we need like, and that's something that I demand now in my relationships that I realized I didn't before, my romantic ones in particular. Funny enough, my friendships, I realized provided me more care than my romantic. And I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of fucking sense. But understanding why now it's a non-negotiable. I don't care how big tall I am. Like I might be a tall, big woman, but I'm very sensitive and I need a lot of care.
Mhm.
Right. And I think a lot of us have to acknowledge that, especially Black women, especially women who have been made to, queer folks who have been made to feel as if you're only valuable if you give of service and your body doesn't matter. I think Jupiter is going to really expand the idea that no, the only way you can matter is if you have and also can provide care.
Yes, I love that. I love that for Jupiter and Cancer. And I really hope that to be true, especially as people are awakening to the fact that like care is a human right
Yes, it is.
in all the ways. And the fact that we've accepted so little
Mhm.
is it's just so sad. We
Yes.
we accept so little and we expect so little of each other that it's like I can't believe we've been living like this for so long.
Yes. Yes. So now the idea of, I mean, the energy is you are the change. So what the hell you gonna do with it, y'all? What you gonna do with it?
Exactly.
And I say go into your dreamscapes and and engage different modalities. So speaking of, so I'm asking everybody this season to give me a song that kind of encompasses what we've talking about. So Laura, I wanted to know, as a kind of way for folks to really understand 2025, what's a song that you think, you can give me more than one because it's a big ass year, but what's a song you think encompasses what we are going to be coming into?
Oh my God. So when you asked me this, I was like thinking about it, and the one that really stood out to me is a song I just recently discovered. Um, let me go find it. It is Jay Park. Do you know Jay Park? He is a Korean, Argentinian Korean artist. The
Hmm.
song is called Pac-Man. And there is a line from this song that basically says, "Fear is holding me down. It's killing me how fear is holding me down." But it's a
Mm,
beautiful love song. And honestly, I believe 2024 is all about overcoming your fears and leaning into your fears and transmuting that into courage. And I think ultimately, Mars and Leo is about remembering your courage and leading from a heart space, right? Keeping your heart open and soft as we are navigating these very violent times. I mean, it's always been violent, right?
yeah.
So that's my song.
Okay, nice, nice. I love that. And I was thinking about it. I think this is my Leo coming out, but the first thing I thought of was Glorilla's Let Her Cook. I'm like, yes, bitch, that is that's it. That's it. That's it. Let her cook. You better put that motherfucker, you better transmute that shit.
Yes. My sister is so good at this. Every season, she gives me a song that embodies my mood. I feel like she's really good at this. She has Venus and Mars in Leo, but she's really good at the song curation, you know?
That makes,
But
yeah, it's
but
funny.
but I'll have
Yes.
to think about it more and send them to you.
Oh yes, please do. Yes. So, all right. So we can talk forever, y'all, but we're gonna wrap this up. So I want to thank Laura once again. Laura has been here every season with me. I'm hoping you come back in next season as well. We can continue these conversations. And y'all, as always, think about your own song. Okay, think about your own song. What is the song that will help you embody 2025 change? And then think about giving yourself a playlist for 2025. Give yourself a song for a month. Like allow yourself to go into and prepare for what is coming by laying the groundwork for your dreaming and possibility making. So work with music if you can, all right? And let me know what happens in the show notes below. And as always, keep dreaming, keep exploring, because it's through the dreamscape so we can make our future realities present. All right, till next time.
Bye.